and welcome in to the PHLY Phillies postmortem show on our season. It says postseason, but it's really post the Phillies season. It's not the postseason, it's the post of the season. But welcome in. This is all brought to you by Ace Hardware Home Services.com. Red October is dead. Guys, I officially, in my sad dad duty this morning, walked out to the flagpole. I pulled in the flagpole that had a Phillies flag on it, and I officially hung an Eagles flag from the front door.
Did you play taps along the way?
In my head, I think it was playing, yeah.
It's official. It's official.
It's a sad moment each year when I bring in the flag because I go, well, I won't see this for about 5 more months, 6 more months. Cool.
And also, we just weren't expecting this so soon. I mean, we knew at some point you were going to be changing the flag to the Eagles flag. We knew at some point it was going to be the official postseason. But
I was hoping that was like late November.
Yeah, it hasn't, and it hasn't been. The last 2 years, we haven't had a end of season this early.
It's gotten worse.
So,
it's gotten worse over the last 3 years. It's progressively getting worse. World Series, CS, now DS. This sucks. I'm still not over it.
I told you guys, I was nervous. I had an epiphany. Lately, I've been having more like meaningful dreams. I was telling Tyler about that. And I had an epiphany.
Ray had a scary, accurate dream maybe coming up. So
we'll see. I'm not going to say it yet until it's actually happened.
Oh, no. Yankees, Mets, World Series.
Oh, no. It had nothing to do with baseball. It was about us, our personal lives.
Yeah.
Oh.
She basically just told me to be on baby watch. She thinks the baby's coming soon.
I wasn't going to say anything publicly because I don't want to, jinx it. But I did have a Tyler Zulli baby dream, apparently, about him and Bridget having their baby. So, when you have people close to you that are due soon, you apparently dream about them. So, anyways, I had another epiphany earlier of like, holy crap, it's been World Series, NLCS, patterns. I mean, Jamie, your girls know all about patterns. Patterns tell you it could possibly have been NLDS elimination, but reality was telling me no.
So what you're telling me is the Phillies lose a wild card next year. Great.
Honestly, if they don't change things, you never know. But that's not going to happen.
I mean, I get it. It's easy to use that as a launching point for a discussion, and it's certainly possible. I think that there is a feel of downward trajectory with this team. Maybe not so in the fact that it's like, hey, they lost World Series, then they lost NLCS, then they lost NLDS, but a downward trajectory in the fact that the core is a year older and, productivity seemed to slip from a handful of guys who, more than a handful of guys across the offensive front this postseason. I think it's a launching point for a deeper conversation about, how much longer is a team productive as your star, your core get a little bit older. So I don't use it as like an immediate, causation correlation type of thing to say that's how it's going to be. But I do think that there's certainly merit to a conversation about, reverse in terms of regression for sure.
Well, I think this offseason is one, a very difficult one, and two, a fascinating one. I can't get the Zielecki blurb out of my head the other day because, I've been around journalists a long time in my career and, I read and rely on them and really respect what they do. But a lot of journalists don't want to, even while informed, come out and say it and be a take guy. And if it's not properly sourced, so what they do is they hide a lot of stuff in the tea leaves. And Todd Zielecki's blurb the other day, I can't get out of my mind because of who he named, more specifically, who he didn't name. And when you think about the changes this team is facing, Alec Bohm wasn't named, Bryson Stott wasn't named, Brandon Marsh wasn't named, Johan Rojas wasn't named, Edmundo Sosa wasn't named. You can go on to say that they're under the veil of and more. For you podcast listeners, I just did the fake air quotes, but I think they know, at least I'm hopeful they know, based on that some things got to change. And maybe it's not Bryson Stott's fault or Alec Bohm's fault, but when you're landlocked into massive contracts with some veteran players that are somewhat immobile, you have to think about maybe moving younger pieces for upgrades elsewhere throughout your team. So from that standpoint, I think it's a pretty fascinating offseason to see what they do.
And I want to clarify, I think a lot of times when people talk about whether it's blowing up a roster or even just making roster moves, it's with this expectation that somebody failed, someone's not good enough. The team as a whole failed because of individual mistakes. That doesn't make any of these guys, quote unquote, bad players. I do actually firmly believe, regardless of sport, in order for a team to be a championship contender, you have to have the right balance of talent, leadership, experience, youth, like all of that has to come together. And I think so many times we just get caught up in like, oh, this team either has the highest paid guys in the league. Like there are some teams like the Inter Miamis of the MLS that just throw all this money out on like a Messi. Then there's some teams where it's like, oh, they just have all these veterans, like the Lakers have had a few years. And we're just going to bring in all the experienced guys and all of LeBron James and his veteran crew. And then there's other times with teams where it's just like, well, they just have the right chemistry. And it's all these things are correct, but it's got to be more than that. Like sometimes it's just a bad mix. And I think for this Phillies group in this baseball era, when you look at other teams and you look at all the changes that they've been making and the Phillies running it back with the same roster, it's stale, it's predictable, and it's also not enough. It wasn't enough last season, which is why they got knocked out in the NLCS. And it's not enough this season to say they're just going to come back more experienced, hungrier. Everyone's learning. We're going to get a full season of Bryce. We're going to get a full season of Trey. We're going to get everyone healthy because, as we know, injuries alone are not predictable. So you can't even say, oh, now we're going to have a full season, everyone, so everything's going to be magically better. We still didn't get a full season of Bryce, Trey, JT, anyone except for Nick Castellanos. So
well, they're over 32. You're probably not going to get that going forward.
And that's the other part. Realistically, those 30-plus crew, they're not going to give you a whole season. They're not. I know Bryce was talking about how it's his expectation that moving forward, he's going to be able to play a lot of games. He's not going to miss as much time. Bryce, you're getting older. The reality is we don't know that. You might still have each season, a few weeks here and there, you're on the IL, that you're out. So I do think there's merit in also saying and being realistic of, this is a fantastic group. This is an awesome clubhouse. But this awesome clubhouse is not enough to translate into winning a championship. And that means some of the fan favorites and some people, especially with the contracts that are movable, might get moved.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many of those are movable, right? You talk about guys that are landlocked into pretty substantial contracts. And that's why I said to you guys a couple of days ago, I think largely, with the exception of a trade that we maybe didn't see coming, and that probably is only 3 or 4 guys, right?
Tyler, I think that's why people are starting to think like, oh, is Alec Bohm gone? Is Brandon Marsh gone? Because these guys have value. To your point.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Those
you don't trade crap just and expect to get something back, right? You got to trade something of merit.
If you're going to remove the core of landlocked contracts, right? You're not going anywhere off of Bryce Harper's contract. You're not going anywhere off of Trey Turner's contract. You could start to talk about the guys that their contracts are winding down, but I'm not sure that even with them, the core is going to be moved much. I think it's going to be remotely there or mostly the same core. The guys that you're referring to are the ones that, as you said, weren't mentioned in Todd's piece. The ones that people are going to bring up this offseason include Alec Bohm, include Brandon Marsh, include Bryson Stott. I think it's those 3 in particular. Who has the question is, who has the value that you're going to want in return, and how do you replace those guys in the interim until you get that value of return? That's what the Phillies are going to have to weigh this offseason if they want to shake things up, if they want to not run it back, as you said, Renee. If they want those things to happen, they're going to have to play the balancing act of finding a return, a trade partner with the return, and in the interim, replacing those guys until an Aiden Miller or a Justin Crawford or whomever you're Starlin Caba, whomever you're thinking of that's going to be the long-term solution.
Who you're talking about there is Alec Bohm, because if this was the NBA and you didn't have long-term plans to sign Alec Bohm, you would be trying to flip his expiring contract. And he has 1 year remaining here. He has value. He was one of your most consistent hitters. So if you're, I know Matt Gelb has said, Brandon Marsh has value in this league, and absolutely does. He's a young, price controlled guy who didn't exactly run with his opportunity to be a full-time starter this year, but teams would have value in that. But Alec Bohm is the guy that like a team could see and go, damn, I can see him at the corner. I have a contract here for him for the next, 6 years, and we feel comfortable with Alec Bohm that you might be able to get actually something in return. And then the other school of thought is, do you let him just play that final year at like the estimated 9.1 million and hope Aiden Miller's ready a year from now? So that's kind of the decision that they're going to have to make on Bohm is, do you squeeze the juice out for one more year and let him ride off into the sunset? Or do you trade him now and try to get something for him? I think he's the most fascinating one to watch this offseason.
And to me, I think the other reality is a guy like Alec Bohm, much like Bryson Stott, although it's hard to even talk about moving them because everybody loves them, their stock did go up. You look at especially Alec Bohm, you look at him as the home run derby, the all-star that he was this season, also being top of the league in doubles and RBIs, being one of the most consistent hitters throughout the course of the regular season. Yes, he had the issues
my bad.
after.
Real quick, Renee, there's 2 years arbitration left on Bohm. I thought it was just one, so excuse me.
All good. So for Bohm, much like for Stott, they're young. They're on the, their numbers are improving. We talked about it for Bryson Stott that his numbers were looking a little bit more like 2022 at times. So if you're a team, especially a team there's plenty of teams out there, whether they're building teams or teams on the cusp that need some of those corner pieces like a third baseman, there's options there. And I think as we keep talking about, there are contracts that are absolutely not movable. So of the movable guys, yes, Rojas and Marsh are also in that conversation. But realistically, what return on investment are you going to get for a Brandon Marsh or Johan Rojas in comparison to an Alec Bohm package or a Bryson Stott package? You probably are going to give up less pieces. So maybe instead of having to give up so much in either prospects or just players in general, you probably are going to give up less, but you're going to give up some guys that are difficult to walk away from for some. But honestly, I think if we want to talk about possible moves, Alec Bohm and Bryson Stott, Brandon Marsh is in that conversation too, are definitely in the. Yeah, I think they're definitely guys that other teams. The other thing about them is they're players that if you're a team that's looking to build that clubhouse, build that depth, build that team chemistry, these are also great, like foundational team chemistry guys that are young, that are experienced. They all have playoff experience, World Series experience as well. So if you're a team that's in a build mode, you're going to want to have a Brandon Marsh that's going to be barking at you guys and hyping up the crowd. You're going to want to have an Alec Bohm who people just love or Bryson Stott. So there's so much value that is beyond even just their baseball pedigree and stats and numbers of who they are as a team looking to build that foundation. I think if not one of them probably is definitely going to be gone without a doubt.
Are you trying to sell us? Are you trying to sell yourself? Or are you trying to sell the Phillies?
No, I'm selling. This is the reality. I think people are, it's so hard for us to come to terms with the reality because we like these guys.
Because it's a very likable team.
They're young, but someone's got to go.
So here's the thing with Bohm. I've said this for a while. I don't believe that Alec Bohm is the Phillies' long-term plan at third base, even prior to his
yes, you've been consistent strong, with that.
Solid. And I'm not saying they trade him. I think that they're just going to play the arbitration game with Alec Bohm. He's got 2 years left of arbitration. He's probably going to get somewhere in the $8 to $9 million range this year, which means if he's productive again next year at the clip that he was this past season, he's probably going to get somewhere in the $11 to $13 million range in 2026.
And you probably can't do better than that on the open market. You know what I mean?
And precisely my point. I think then a team is going to back the brink truck up for him, and he's going to get a big contract somewhere in free agency. So I think the Phillies' game plan is going to be a 2-year game plan with Alec Bohm, with an understanding that they're probably not going to re-sign him as a free agent. I would be stunned if he got a contract extension in the next 2 years. But I don't believe that they're going to move him either. I know that the taste is really sour in a lot of people's mouths, and rightfully so. He was unproductive in the postseason. His attitude was poor at best and was detrimental to I think himself and the team at worst. The taste of Alec Bohm Like the sour taste of Alec Bohm's postseason performance and return from injury is certainly present, I think, for a lot of people. I also don't know if you're going to get a, the 40 double guy in the open market for less than $11 million a season.
So here you go, Tyler. Maybe it's a trade just to free the position up. Maybe internally they feel like Aiden Miller can be a long-term shortstop. Can I sell you on moving Alec Bohm to free up third base to sign in Alex Bregman?
Sure.
Yeah, I think so. But again, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be like, well, yeah. And that's, of course, assuming there's a competent left field replacement, maybe a competent center field replacement.
It doesn't change the fact that you still have positional need elsewhere.
Yes, exactly. And I know there's a story out there already. And look, we have long offseason to talk about all of these things like new batting orders and new lineups. Somebody already wrote the story that maybe Trey Turner is better suited for the outfield with this team already going into year 3 of a 13-year contract. Now, I think long-term, we all have talked about the possibility that, one day he could be an outfielder for this team. So, like, there's a lot, and that's why I say this offseason is going to be fascinating. You know, is it a lineup change? Is it positional changes for guys within? Is it moving somebody? Because the free agent market is, sexy in a couple spots, but they might not necessarily be spots that the Phillies have positional needs for. So do you like tinker within and shift guys around? We've already seen Bryce and Kyle play multi-positions over a couple years now. You know, I'm not saying I have a strong feeling on it because I haven't thought about it for long. But, like, I know there's too much Edmundo Sosa love going on. Stott, Turner, they can be swapped. It's going to be fascinating.
And that's the key. Like, I'm trying to be realistic and not be connected to anybody and locked in on anyone except for, like, Bryce and Kyle. Anybody else can either move positions, move teams, whatever. I'm not overly connected to anyone for this exact reason. This is the reality of the business. This team has underperformed. They've run it back with the same group. And to your point, Jamie, some of these moves might not be a 1-for-1. We're going to move Alec Bohm to bring in another third baseman. It might be to move him and then a later move, whether we know Aiden Miller's not going to be ready this season. I know Justin Crawford has brought up in the chat. He's not going to be ready. They're predicting for both of them in 2026. So you have some young talent waiting in the wings, but in the interim, you need to it's not just about upgrading some of these positions. It's about a change in personnel. It's time for some changes. We've seen the same issues. We've seen the same struggles. Bring in somebody different.
If Willy Adames can end up being the best bat you obtain, then you have the conversation of like, okay, does Trey Turner make sense in the outfield? If we can't get Anthony Santander, do we put Trey in center and find a new left fielder and get Adames at shortstop? I think there's a lot of discussions to be had.
And there's definitely room for tinkering. There's versatility. Yeah.
And the one thing I will say, just strictly on a defensive conversation, if you are thinking about moving,
don't make two positions worth. It's like the old offensive line thing.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily sure you get better defensively if you flip Stott and Turner. Now, Turner.
No, you don't. You get worse at both positions.
Stott is a good defensive shortstop. He's probably a borderline good defensive shortstop. He's an elite defensive second baseman. Turner is a bad to average defensive shortstop. I have no idea what he would be as a second baseman. I would have to go back to see how many games he's even ever played at second base. I think that defensive flip-flop actually makes you worse defensively.
Absolutely. I think if Turner's going to change positions, I don't think it's this year. Let me get out in front of that. I think he's your starting shortstop next year, but I think if he is to change positions, it's to go to the outfield. Second base is something you can replace easier, I think, than an outfield because there's so few rare good outfielders. So I think if there is a change with him in 2026, it's to the outfield.
Yeah, well, let's continue this conversation after we handle some business first because time's getting away from us here. So let me tell you guys all about our friends at Golden Nugget Jewelers. Golden Nugget Jewelers, the place that you can go find a ring. It's always ring season, even though the hunt for a ring is over this year for the Phillies. It's not over for you guys because with Golden Nugget Jewelers, that is where Philly gets engaged. What does that mean? That means you can go there to Chestnut and 8th in downtown Philly and check out this family-owned and operated business that's been around since 1987. Whether you're getting engaged or you're looking to just buy some jewelry outside of wedding jewelry, they've got a wide assortment of rings and wedding bands for getting engaged, for if it is any wedding jewelry you're looking to purchase. But they also have watches, diamond necklaces, diamond bracelets, earrings, and much more. And with Golden Nugget Jewelers, you have options that fit anyone's style. So a wide variety you can choose from, a lot of assortments of different shapes and colors. And you also get a final cleaning and written appraisal with every engagement ring that you buy. So we love the benefits of a nice cleaning and that written appraisal. So whether you're getting engaged or you just want to buy some special jewelry to say, I love you, and tell somebody how much you appreciate them and how much you care for them, you can get all of that with our friends over at Golden Nugget Jewelers. You also deserve an expert and the best price, and Golden Nugget Jewelers has that. Again, it's where Philly gets engaged. Head over to goldennuggetjewelers.com today to learn more.
And let me tell you about a store that's near and dear to my heart, and that's Ace True Value hardware stores. I love Ace Hardware True Value stores. And now the beauty of Ace is they'll come right to your door. I love it because everybody in those stores knows what they're talking about. You can tell these guys have worked a million jobs and they've seen and done everything, and they have an answer for all of it. It's like a real life Google person in a hardware store. It's great. You can hang out and just chew the fat in there if you want. Well, now those same trusted, respected guys can come right to your house and fix everything you need, whether it's a leaky pipe you've been ignoring, an HVAC system, whatever it is. Ace Hardware Home Services, maybe it's a faucet you swore to your wife you were going to replace last fall. You never got around to it because the Phillies were hot, and then you forgot. Whether it's plumbing, heating, cooling, they've got the trusted pros that are going to keep your home humming all year long. Ace Hardware Home Services, we're bringing helpful home. The helpful you love from the store now right to your front door. Visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at acehardwarehomeservices.com to get you started on your next project. All right, guys, we have a long season, off season, I should say, so we kind of have to pace some of these conversations. We're not going to make huge roster changes today, but it's just to the conversation of I would love to be a fly on that wall when Dave Dombrowski, Sam Fold, Preston Mattingly, maybe Rob Thompson, and are having these discussions about who is expendable, what are they worth, what can it bring us. Now, speaking of Rob Thompson, the Atlanta Braves yesterday started their evaluation process, and a lot of guys are gone. Our old Sal pal Fasano is gone. A hitting coach is gone. They've made some clean house decisions. Now, Bob Nightingale tweeted out that the Phillies are next to go through this evaluation process. Again, a very fascinating part of this offseason. Caleb Cotham was written about prior to the season as a guy around Major League Baseball that could be a head coach soon. I think when you look at the postseason, the starting pitching was not the issue. The starting pitching was great. The bullpen, obviously, he works with as well. That was a nightmare. I would be shocked if Caleb Cotham has moved on from. Kevin Long, the hitting coach, I think is the one that's probably more a little bit on the griddle. And, of course, Rob Thompson. Renee and Tyler, your thoughts on, are the Phillies going to have major changes to the coaching staff?
I think there's maybe a 10% chance, maybe 10 to 15% chance that Kevin Long is fired. I think there's maybe
really? I would go a little bit higher, but not too much higher.
I think there's maybe a 5% chance that Caleb Cotham's fired. I think it might even be less. I think there's maybe a 0.5% chance.
Yeah, I agree with
Rob
that.
Thompson is fired. I think the only one who may have to worry about themselves out of the big three is Kevin Long. Now, you may see some subsidiary coaches fired, like the auxiliary staff and things like that.
Coach, yeah.
Somebody might lose their job somewhere along the line. But I think of the big three between Cotham, Long, and Thompson, I think the only one that even has a sliver of danger is Kevin Long. I think Caleb Cotham did a really nice job this year with this pitching staff for the most part. I think that they will ride with Rob Thompson for another year. He's one of the winningest managers in terms of record, percentage-wise. In his tenure, they just won 95 games. I know the exit is unfortunate. And it's definitely a stain for a lot of Phillies fans right now. But I think the only one that has any kind of maybe look over their shoulder worry is Kevin Long.
Yeah, I mean, this is the time of the exit interviews and the thanks for a good season, but we didn't get to our expectations, so it's no surprise it starts with the Braves. You're not going to see it from the Royals after losing 106 games last year to then get to, a nice division series run. For the Phillies, someone's going to go. That's the reality. And if they don't get rid of someone, I'm going to be pleasantly surprised. I think it's going to be Kevin Long, especially given the fact that not only did we see hitting issues throughout the course of this season, but both postseasons we saw bats go cold and no answers. And of course, as we know, much like we talk about with every coaching staff, it's not him out there hitting for the guys, but there's got to be something shaken up, because otherwise you're just showing that this is okay. We kind of failed. It's okay. You can just run everybody back. So if just for the sake of different personnel, different voices, different philosophies, I think it's going to be Kevin Long. I don't see them moving on from both Kevin and Caleb, because I don't think you want to shake up too much in terms of the voices. And I think for Rob, as I mentioned yesterday, I think you do want some stability, but you want some change to balance that off. I think for Rob, he's in the hot seat though. So I don't think he's gone this off season, but
he goes in the lame duck year, one more year remaining.
Yeah, I think, and I said this last year, but what bailed him out is this was a really good season. You look at how their wins increased. Overall, the team was obviously much better than last year, aside from the postseason being a shorter run. So I think he's earned himself another season. But I think after having 3 consecutive postseason appearances, that's been helping him. But if you continue to fail and not get to at least a World Series, I think Rob's gone next year. But I think he's in the hot seat.
I agree with both of you. I think Kevin Long is definitely the most hot seat here. I agree with Tyler. I think small chance Rob gets fired. I would think John Middleton has a little more patience. Now, Kevin Long is the interesting one, because whether this is right or wrong, you guys can chime in on this. I don't hold Kevin Long too accountable for a Bryce Harper, a Kyle Schwarber, a Trey Turner, a Nick Castellanos, a JT Realmuto. Like, those guys are fully baked pies at this point. He can obviously help them along the way and points things out, but their swings are their swings. Those guys know when something's off themselves. Of course, they have these conversations with Kevin Long, but I don't blame Kevin Long because Trey Turner and Nick Castellanos can't lay off a low and outside breaking ball when they know it's coming. Like that no longer is Kevin Long. So for me, with the hitting coach, I always look to the young guys. Johan Rojas, Alec Bohm, Bryson Stott, Edmundo Sosa, Brandon Marsh, even Cody Clemens and some other guys, and how he helps them get over their early career hurdles. And, when you grade those guys, I think Alec Bohm improved every year. So he did a fine job there. Bryson Stott had a major regression this year, which to me was one of the hardest parts about this season. Johan Rojas, he is what he is. I don't know how much positive or negative there. And Brandon Marsh had an opportunity to steal a starting job and didn't. So I think that's why Kevin Long's probably most on the hot seat, is the guys that you thought were the daycare, youthful part of this team that you could build on going forward, all for the most part, except for Bohm, had pretty big regressions this year.
Yeah. And essentially, when you look at the other teams that are having success right now, outside of their heavy hitters, it's the fact that other guys are stepping up. The 7-8-9 that loaded the bases for Lindor's grand slam. The Yankees, they're not really winning, even with Aaron Judge, who's been struggling a lot more. That's other guys stepping up. Of course, it helps to have a Giancarlo Stanton, but you need other pieces to the pie. As you talk about the baked pie, let's keep with the pie analogy. You need other pieces to the pie that are going to be able to help, and they're not doing their part. And so I think regardless, it's hard, because with professional athletes, we know to an extent the coaches only do so much for every sport. But for a hitting coach to have a team that, as you mentioned, we're not seeing the progress of the young guys. We're not seeing them be able to work out of this when they are in a hitting slump, being able to work out of that. Someone's got to be held responsible. Someone's got to be to blame. And yes, you're going to blame and make some changes in the roster in terms of player personnel. But that's why I think Kevin Long is going to be the one that's not the scapegoat, but it's going to take a lot of that accountability and the responsibility for the fact that this team scored 12 runs, including 1 run in elimination game. And Kevin Long, hitting coach, got to go. Let's bring in somebody else. We even saw, to your point about JT, though, we saw the work that was done and heard them talking about him specifically, the mechanics, the biomechanics, the legs, everything he was doing. And then coming off of his knee procedure, he was never the same guy. Is that on Kevin Long? I mean, that's on the fact that he's also 30 plus and coming off of a knee procedure and played a lot of games. So no, it's not just on Kevin Long, but I think that you do have to start being able to point the finger at someone of maybe we just need a different voice, different personnel, different philosophies in coaching. So Kevin Long, I think, is the one that goes.
Well, I think it's a difficult conversation when you bring up the the supplemental guys on teams, because teams are constructed across these playoffs in vastly different ways. The Tigers are that their entire team is
team ever.
Other guys, right? There is no star on that team per se, right? Like they have some first round draft picks. Like Spencer Torkelson was a number 1 overall pick. He also was sent down to Toledo at midway through the season. They're getting contributions from dudes up and down the lineup that are making 6 figures as opposed to, $100 million contracts. The Phillies are constructed in a little bit of a different way where your auxiliary guys, your Brandon Marsh, your Bryson Stott, your Johan Rojas, it would be lovely if those guys stepped up in big moments. Brandon Marsh was not good in the postseason. Bryson Stott had the one really good game and was benched in another. You were worrying about who's going to play. Is it Weston Wilson or Austin Hayes, or is it going to be Johan Rojas and Brandon Marsh? Those supplemental guys, it would be lovely if those guys stepped up in big moments. But with this particular team, comp to a Tigers or even to a Guardians who have a Jose Ramirez, but they, got big contributions from David Fry off the bench last night.
Yeah.
Get contributions from, the smaller named guys throughout their lineup. This Phillies team is constructed to win on the veteran heavy, high contract, pros type of hitters. Those guys, they're the ones that failed you in this series. The team as a collective unit failed you. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, did you see the numbers on everyone not named Harper and Castellanos?
Yeah, so
I have to dig it up. Was that our text chain that we shared that?
We talked about it yesterday between Bohm.
It's abysmal.
Kyle Schwarber had 1 hit after his leadoff home run in game 1 of the he had no hits. Alec Bohm had 1 hit. Brandon Marsh had 1 hit. I mean, again, that's not the Brandon Marsh aside, but like JT Realmuto, Kyle Schwarber are 2 guys that this team was expecting to rely upon that were not particularly good. Trey Turner had 3 hits. They were 3 scattered singles. What did they mean? Probably very little in the grand scheme of things. So it's a different conversation based on the different teams and the way that they're constructed, where, yes, you would love to see kind of these young guys, Kevin Long, get a little bit more of a molding factor on some of them. And Bryson Stott taking a regression year was not something that we expected. Brandon Marsh's strikeout rate going through the roof and his BABIP coming back to earth didn't help the team either throughout the year. But the success and failure was always going to be predicated on the guys that were in that $100 million contract range.
Yeah, well, the team's chase rate from the first half of the year was 32.3%, which was the 10th highest in baseball. The Phillies' second half of the season chase rate, 35.3%, which was the worst in baseball. And, it's the London trip, it's the trade deadline, it's Whit Merrifield. All around that time, something happened where things just went to S. Now, I will say this about Kevin Long. There's a man playing now in an ALCS who is fond of Mr. Kevin Long. Kevin Long went to the All-Star game wearing his Nationals jersey a couple years ago. I believe it was the same All-Star game where Mr. John Middleton flew Mr. Juan Soto home. Tyler, don't you be a wet blanket here. John Middleton flew Juan Soto home on the Phillies charter because cheap-ass Mr. Lerner down in D.C. wouldn't. If Juan Soto says, Mr. Middleton, I really am a big fan of that Kevin Long, you have to make the decision before free agency. But I'm just saying, if Juan Soto really is that good of a relationship with Kevin Long, sir, your job is protected. A lifetime contract if you get Juan Soto here.
Yeah, I think for anybody that
safe.
wants, yeah, whoever Juan Soto says.
That's the only way he's going to be a Philly.
Turn it off.
Hey, they threw around, what kind of money did Yamamoto get? 300 mil?
325.
Yeah, and they were willing to go over 300 there. What's another couple hundred mil to go get Juan Soto? He's exactly what you need.
I don't think it's a monetary thing. It's not enough. It's not like they're not going to offer the guy. I just don't think he ends up signing here. That's all.
Oh, I don't either.
They're going to throw $1 billion at him.
Do you think?
Well, you know what pisses me off the most is when we first started hearing the discussions of Juan Soto, like the Yankees possibly not being able to keep Juan Soto in the future, and we started hearing the rumors about the Mets being a team he could go to. At that time, the Mets were down bad. The Mets were a struggling team. All their fans had given up. They were, a below 500 team. And I was saying, why would he go to the Mets when you can go to a team like the Phillies, who are the best in baseball and on the doorsteps of winning a World Series, and come here? And then joke's on me, because then the Mets turn around and knock the Phillies out the playoffs. And to be honest, if I'm Juan Soto, both teams are very appetizing, but the Mets right now look a little bit better. So,
well, if Juan Soto were to come here, Renee, do you know who I'd recommend to be in his corner with him? That would be our friends over at TrueMark Financial. I would say, hey, Juan, buddy, pal, you got a lot of money now, like $550 million worth or whatever. You should talk to the people at TrueMark Financial, because they're the credit union that can make a difference for you. HELOC. I took one out a couple years ago, and I got to talk to the people at TrueMark about transferring it over to them, because I trust them just more than I do most banks. It's a home line of equity credit against your house. I did it when we remade our kitchen. You can preserve your savings and get access to funds for big renovations like I did, education expenses, or just emergency. You can use TrueMark's financial budgeting tools to save for special purchases like limited edition merchandise. Regular contributions accumulate over time to help you reach saving goals effectively. And you can transfer as little as $5 a week. And that gives you $260 in savings. Boom. Right there. More than enough for that Kelly Green jersey you're saving up for Christmas time. So TrueMark Financial is federally insured by the NCUA and an equal opportunity lender. For more information, visit truemark.com/PHLY. They're located right here in Fort Washington. They have locations everywhere. You should talk to them. You should learn about them, and you should trust TrueMark Financial. Mr. Juan Soto, I will put you right in touch with the people you need over at TrueMark.
Yeah, of course, they're locally found in so many communities around Philly. So Juan Soto has options to choose from with TrueMark. Yeah,
branches everywhere.
But we also have options for where we buy our tickets, because with the Game Time app, you have options of being able to see your tickets. You get a nice view of your seats, which makes it convenient that you know where you're going to be sitting for that game. And you have a nice idea of how far are you from the stage, the field, the ice, the court, whatever you're attending. And also they have a lot of benefits. With Game Time, the app allows you to be able to see tickets for games, for concerts, for comedy shows, for pretty much anything, theater shows, so a wide variety of sports and entertainment and music that you can go check out. They also have the upcoming live events on the app that are always updating. They send you alerts as new tickets are dropping and available, so you can easily be able to check out what's new and what's available in your area that's coming up to go check out. They also have some other benefits. So the Game Time picks, for example, it filters out the fluff, and it allows you to only look at the incredible deals on great seats. So you don't have to waste time sifting through and searching through thousands of tickets. It can be very overwhelming when you're buying tickets. Instead, the Game Time picks gives you those tickets that they feel like are the best value. Good seats, good price, good opportunity to have some fun and enjoy your experience. Because with the Game Time app, they can take the stress out of buying any tickets, but they can't promise the event itself, especially if it's a playoff baseball game, will not be stressful. So I love the convenience. I love that they send you updated alerts. I get even emails from them of new deals. They share the super deals. They share all the curated deals that just make it easier to find the best prices on great seats, plus lowest price guarantee. They also have event cancellation protection and other protections as well. So today, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, use code PHLY, and get $20 off of your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create that account, Use code PHLY for $20 off and download the Game Time app today because what time is it? If you are a Padres fan, especially, it's game time.
Golf season.
Yeah. Well, hey, Michkov Mania starts tonight, Tyler. You can get yourself. Yeah. You can get some Flyers tickets. You can get some Sixers tickets. It's always
what time does the game start? 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I wish the West Coast start wasn't a season opener. West Coast trip should be illegal. Come on,
it's ridiculous. I'm wearing my Flyers orange and also repping the WNBA finals.
Yeah, what happened last night? I saw some activity in our Discord. Did the New York Liberty lose or win?
Yes, they lost. Brianna Stewart had a chance to win the game, and they ended up losing.
That's a shame. New York lost. That's a shame. Steve Garrison, I agree with you. It would be scary to see the Mets get Soto and Corbin Burns. I very much do not want to see that. But this is the PHLY Phillies postseason show. Brought to you by Ace Hardware Home Services. Visit acehardwarehomeservices.com to find out more. Now, Rich Hoffman, shameless plug here for our own community here at PHLY. And if you ever want to consider supporting us here, becoming a diehard, I think you absolutely get your bang for your buck. Not only do you get a free shirt, you get an invite to our Discord channel where we have this madman named Vince that just gives away tickets all the time to people randomly. But more importantly, you get access to some of the best writers in the city. And Hannah Kaiser, who joined us from Citi Field, she put up a story, her first on allphly.com, about her time in the Phillies locker room after the game. So you should read that. And then our own Rich Hoffman wrote a story that I was reading this morning. And I wanted to float this by you guys because I agree with Rich a lot. We kind of are lockstep in the way we view sports and a lot of other things. And he wrote his worst 21st century Phillies season enders. And I had no disagreements with his list. Here, I'll read it to you guys, and then we can discuss amongst ourselves.
Okay.
He ranks the worst one as 2023, an unthinkable collapse against an inferior opponent when the Phillies were betting favorites to win the World Series. Do we all agree last year was the worst?
Of what? How long has it been? Since when?
The 21st century.
No. I think it's second.
You think it's second?
I think it's second.
Yeah, I don't think it's the worst.
Oh, I think it's the worst. 2011.
That's number one.
Okay, that's fine. I think you can flip-flop 1 and 2. Either way is fine. 2011.
It's the best team the Phillies have ever fielded. And
here's what
he
says, Tyler. The best Phillies team of my lifetime.
Yeah.
With an untouchable pitching staff, can't score for Doc at home in Game 5. Ryan Howard tears his Achilles to make the loss even more painful. And as it turns out, it was the end of an era.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would go 2011 as the worst one. They were the better team by far. And then, of course, there was month-long conversations about, well, they should have let the Braves get it. And shut up. No, your team won 104 games or whatever it was. It was the best team this organization's maybe ever assembled. You had a pitching staff that resembled an all-star team and an offense that was still good. It was still in its, relatively in its prime. Ryan Howard was still hitting 40 home runs. Jimmy Rollins was your catalyst. Chase Utley was still hitting 270, 280. Raul Ibanez, was Raul Ibanez on the team still?
Yes. Yeah.
Raul Ibanez was on that team. You brought in Hunter Pence. It was a team that was destined to be maybe the culmination of that era because we kind of all knew that it was coming eventually. But to lose in the fashion that you did, where not only did you lose Game 5 1-0, the one that haunts me even more is the Phillies spotted Cliff Lee a lead at home.
Well, we'll get to the rest. Oh, was that Game 4?
No, it was Game 2. They spotted Cliff Lee
right.
in Game 2 because they
had an opportunity in Game 4 to really kind of.
Roy Halladay won. They won Game 1. They had an opportunity to jump up 2-0 before going back to St. Louis, and they spot Cliff Lee a lead. And he ends up. It was the one time that he kind of fell apart down, in that season. 2011 to me is definitively the biggest stab in the back I've ever had from this baseball team.
I had more respect for the Giants than I did for the Diamondbacks last year. That's why I kind of agree with Rich. Number 3, he puts as the 2010 Phillies team. The best team in baseball loses a close series in which every high leverage. Oh, I'm sorry. This Giants was 2010. Every high leverage moment seemingly went wrong. Cody Ross, man.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what I think also makes it worse is, as we talked about from '08, the slow, gradual trajectory and the downfall is you just kept thinking this is the year, this is the year. 2011 is definitely the worst. I know everyone's talking about the squirrel. I know you guys are
squirrel.
Yeah, like there's so many things that you just could never have
Rats
predicted.
with good PR. That's all they are.
I don't think this has ever like happened again. Like that's like so many fluky things. But 2011 and 2010, and I still have this season rated a lot higher than I think most people do.
All right, well, we'll continue on his list. After 2010, he puts number 4 as this postseason. And then there's no words. It just says 2024. Number 5, he has as 2009. A huge missed opportunity in Game 4, but they were not quite as good as that Yankees team. Respectable loss, great title defense.
Yeah, the Yankees were the better team than them that year.
Alex Rodriguez was
also having a shell of the year prior. Cole Hamels wasn't right the entirety of the year. They had to bring in Pedro Martinez at midway through the year to stay afloat. The pitching staff just wasn't quite exactly where it was the year prior. Yeah. At least
that was the Pedro year, right?
Yeah, they brought Pedro in halfway through the year. That team, the 2009 Yankees, were better than the Phillies. And losing Cole Hamels, really kind of not losing him, but like having a
not getting him. Yeah,
Cliff Lee was carrying the pitching staff on his back. He was sensational that year when they acquired him at the deadline. He wins Game 1. I think he wins Game 5 as well, and that's it. Those are the 2 games that they win. That Yankees team was better than them.
Yeah, and that's why it still hurts, but it hurts a little bit less when you lose to an actual good team because it could have gone either way.
Yes, and then he has number 6, 2022, so close to finishing off the improbable run, which felt within reach after battering Lance McCullers in Game 3, but they lost to a great team. Like 2009, lots of pride after that exit.
Yeah. Again, well, 2022, we all were very just happy that they were there. They barely got into the playoffs.
Yeah, you thought it was the beginning of something.
A World Series run. It just felt like as a Cinderella team, the magic is just not going to run out at some point, and you're just going to, finish the job once you get that far. You're a couple games away from winning another World Series. Personally, I like 2011 as number 1 in my opinion. I think 2011 and 2010 were just, it caught you very off guard. You weren't expecting them to lose. I actually think this season is higher than 2023. I know the NLCS versus Diamondbacks still haunts me to this day, but to have had this season that the Phillies did this year, where they were by far the best team in baseball and not get out of the NLDS, I had more expectation this year, especially after losing last year, that they weren't. I was like, there's no way they're going to have the same errors and the same mistakes end the season. So I actually would put this season probably like top 3, and it's not 1 or 2.
2022, so we talked about the discrepancy between the Yankees and the Phillies. The Yankees were a better team by a small margin. The Astros were a better team by a much wider margin.
Yeah.
I think people do get a little bit annoyed by the fact that the Phillies did go up 2-1 in the series. And I understand that you did have a series lead at one point and lost 3 consecutive games. The Astros were a much better team than the Phillies were that year. Yordan Alvarez was a man on a mission. And when you get no hit in a World Series game, I think that probably just deflates any kind of confidence that you're going to have for the rest of the series. The Astros were the better team.
That cold, couldn't get a hit.
That one's very low on the list for me. It was a wonderful season that I think we're all going to hold in esteem for a long time. It was unexpected. They got into the postseason late. They felt like they were dead on arrival, and for the first 8 innings of Game 1 of a wild card round, they springboard that into a wild card win and a DS win over a Braves team that was great that year, and a CS team a win over the Padres. And, Bedlam at the bank. It's a series. It's a season that I think we're all going to hold in pretty high esteem, despite the fact that they didn't get the job done. That's one of the least of my worries. That was just running into a buzzsaw Astros team.
So the final one on his list, number 7, is 2007. It happened so fast that you could not get too disappointed. You won the division was enough that year. Jeff Francis was dealing anyway.
Yeah, they got blitzed by that. They got blitzed by that Colorado team. It was over before it even began. Colorado steamrolled its way into the postseason. They've been playing
Kaz Matsui with a huge hit in that series.
Yeah.
Isn't that like a bases loaded? Like, I think it was
they swept the Phillies, they swept the NLCS, and then they got swept in the World Series. It was Colorado was on a torrid stretch that 07 year, like you said, it was just nice to get in. It was my first playoff experience ever as a Phillies fan.
Wow.
It is what it is. Like, and you knew like that was just step one. The Phillies were going to be back. And maybe you didn't think they were going to win the World Series in 08, but you knew like they were going to be back and they were going to be around for a while.
Yeah. This was quite the trauma trip.
You know what's funny? I actually feel like now I think about some of these series.
We're healing. This is therapeutic.
Yeah, I mean, it is. When you look at it, it's a lot easier looking bigger picture, especially that 07 to 2011 stretch, because you look at just how everything happened and unfolded, and maybe that's where we are now. I mean, from a 2022 to 2025 stretch for the Phillies of some ups and downs and some random things that have gone wrong and figuring it out, maybe. Yeah, so what this all means to me is from 2007 and 2011, you got World Series runs, actual title, some earlier exits. So basically it's the same thing right now. World Series run, early exits, which means the title's coming. That's the only thing left on our cycle of the 4-year cycle.
Yeah.
So that 4-year cycle had one World Series title. This 4-year cycle still needs that World Series title. So basically what I'm getting from this is the Phillies are winning the World Series in 2025.
Okay. I'll take it. I'll take whatever I can get right now.
Because that seriously though, okay, wait, I'm so sorry. So 2007 was first round exit.
Correct. DS. Yep.
DS exit. 2008 was a World Series title. 2009.
The World Series loss.
World Series loss. And 2011
was a DS loss.
That's basically the same cycle that we're in now, except we have a CS loss. So basically we're missing the completion of the World Series title. It's coming next year.
Cool.
The math is mathing. The pattern's repeating.
All right, I have to get out of here in 1 second, but I am very much to be determined how much of these games I watch tonight because I'm still dead inside. I probably will, but I probably won't do like an all 9-inning viewing. The reason I think it's very interesting tonight is I'm not trying to throw a smoke grenade in the room and then leave, but you guys know how I feel about the bye in baseball. I said it last year. Let me get ahead of this because people like in our Discord misheard me. I do not think the bye is why the Phillies lost. Okay. Everybody heard that? Everybody understands what I'm saying. The bye is not why they lost. I simply hate this format style. And the Yankees got by, but the Guardians and the Dodgers are on the ropes. If the two of them lose their game 5s, that will now be 8 of 12 top 2 seeds that have not advanced to an LCS in the new format. I don't know how big of a sample size people want. I simply hate it. I do not think it's an advantage for any team on a bye. You can say that losers lose and it's a reflection of the team. And I think there's some truth to that. But I simply hate the format. I just wish everyone would continue to play. So I am watching those 2 series tonight with an eye open because if they both lose, that's like 75% of all top 2 seeds in this new format that do not advance. I think that is something that you can evaluate efficiently.
So my question is, if you're going to evaluate efficiently, and I know you got to go, so I'm not going to put this. This is an open-ended question.
Sure.
What's the change? Because
I think it's a fascinating discussion.
Major League Baseball will never.
What does the format look like?
They will never, ever, ever give those games back. You know why?
No. Maybe you reduce it to 1 team gets a bye, and you bring in another player. Like I don't know. I haven't really gotten my head around that because I'm still drinking my own tears. But I will find it interesting if 3 of 4 of the top seeds don't get to an LCS. That's all I'm saying.
And I also want to flip it and say, is this more about the format or is this more about just how close the baseball is?
I just don't like the format.
I mean, on any given day, anybody can win a playoff series, whether you're the number 1 or 2 seed or you're not. it might mean that the league is just so close in talent
It
that
is.
it's no guarantee that the top 2 teams are just going to walk right into a CS.
Rarely does the best team in baseball win a World Series. You know what I mean? Like 162 games is not, if you're the best of 162, it doesn't mean you're winning the World Series. You got a damn good chance. I just don't like taking time off that time of the year. And you guys are my witnesses, because I said it last year, even in the Braves' defeat, that I do think it's a little bit of a disadvantage, and I just hate the new format. So I'm throwing that one out there. I have to run to go pick up my daughter because my father-in-law is getting knee surgery. You guys can debate that amongst yourselves for the final 5 minutes. Just my final thoughts going into the weekend. We got a lot to get into next week. We'll be live 11 a.m. every day. Make sure you're checking out Hannah and Rich's and Jim's writing on allphly.com. You guys have a great weekend, and I will see you too soon.
Thank you, Jamie. Have a good one.
Bye.
To Jamie's point, I think it is difficult to realistically look at this without having another format that makes sense. I know Stephen Garrison's talking about reseeding, but ultimately you have to have a bye for the first round. Every sport does it. Every top seed earns themselves a bye. And if they don't get a bye in the first round, it'd be the opposite issue if they do have a first round elimination of, we worked hard, we were the best team, we deserve a bye. There's no perfect way to do this, because at the end of the day, all that it shows us is teams need to be built not just for 162 games, but make sure they're retooling to be ready for the playoffs. I think that a team like the Phillies, much like the Guardians actually, are 2 teams that didn't do much at the trade deadline, didn't have, like, they're getting a little bit, they've been dealing with some bullpen issues as well, outside of course, the great Manuel Clase. But I think it also just shows you have to build your team for the full gamut.
So here's the thing. Reseeding would be fine. I mean, that might be a middle ground, but here's the thing. If the Phillies, if they reseeded in this year's playoffs, the Phillies, instead of playing the Mets, would have played the Padres. You know what the outcome would have been? I bet you it would have been the exact same thing. You know why? Because the Phillies played horribly in 4 games. So you could sit here and say reseed or blah, 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 or whatever the case may be. The Phillies had every advantage in the book with the exception of momentum. And if you want to use momentum as your driving force, look at the Houston Astros for the last 2 years, who won both division series, not this year, prior 2 years, who won both division series after getting the bye. He brought up the Yankees. The Yankees got the bye. They've taken care of business against the Royals. Yep. The Yankees are going to go to the ALCS. I am not going to sit here and make excuses about a seeding or a reformat or a format or a reseeding or whatever the case may be. The things that I'm going to sit here and tell you, the Mets played good baseball. The Phillies did not play good baseball. Mm-hmm. There's a reason the Phillies are going on vacation, and there's a reason that the Mets are going to the NLCS, because they were the better team over the course of those 4 games for probably 33 of the 36 innings that the 2 teams faced off. The Phillies had every advantage they possibly could have asked for. Zach Wheeler got full rest game 1. Your bullpen was full rested. They stunk. Your lineup got a chance to heal up a little bit more. They were cooked. Kyle Schwarber hit a leadoff home run. He was 1 for 12 in his next 12 at bats. Like, all of these things, I'm not going to sit here and blame it on days off or a format or having a bye versus a team that played in a wild card round. And what I'm going to blame it on is the Mets played good baseball and the Phillies played really crappy baseball for 4 straight games. And that's why the Mets are playing tomorrow. And that's why the Phillies are not.
Yeah, I do think it's important to win game 1 of any series. I do think it's important to take care of your games at home. I know going into game 5s today and tomorrow, teams that are in a winner-take-all situation in their home ballpark, 62 and 66 all time. But teams that have won game 4, teams that have won game 4 when trailing 2-1 have won game 5 56% of the time. So all the numbers are about half. There's no definitive, this is what works, this is what doesn't work. What we do know is momentum is real. You have to win game 1. You also have to win the games when your pitchers go out and deal. The Yankees did that yesterday. Garrett Cole was phenomenal through 7 innings. They win that game. You've got to win the games where your pitchers are able to go 6-7 innings and have minimal damage. On the other side,
you bring up game 1. You bring up game 1, right? The Mets won game 1. They're going to the NLCS. Mm-hmm. The Yankees won game 1. They're going to the ALCS. If Cleveland and San Diego win tonight, they won game 1. Exactly. They're going to the NL and ALCS. Game 1 in a 5-game series is so imperative, especially when you are the home team, because not only does it put a little bit of extra emphasis on game 2 for the other team, but heading into game 4 or game 3 and game 4, you're going to be hitting the road. Having a 1-0 series lead and an opportunity. Now, I'm not saying that it means that it's a definitive you're going up 2-0, but Cleveland had an opportunity to go up 2-0. The Yankees had an opportunity to go up 2-0. Those two teams were the home teams in games 1 and game 2. Stealing the momentum in game 1, I do believe momentum is real from game 1 to game 2.
Yeah.
Stealing momentum like the Padres did and like the Mets did is critical to your success as a road team. Winning game 1 with Zach Wheeler the way that he pitched, I'm not saying it would have changed the outcome of this series because the Phillies stunk. The offense was lifeless for a bulk of it. But if you find a way to win game 1 with the way that Zach Wheeler pitched, I think there is a little bit of weight off the shoulders a little bit. The Phillies didn't capitalize on any opportunity they were given. They were down. It was 1-0. Excuse me. They were up when Zach Wheeler exited the game. You lost. Yeah. It was 1-0 when Ranger Suarez exited the game. You lost. Aaron Nola had given you 5 really good innings. You were down 2-0 at the time. You lost. Like the common theme here is the Mets played well in critical spots and the Phillies didn't. Like, if you want to break it down to like the simplest level, there's your answer.
There it is. And there's a lot to look forward to. There's some game 5s. So thank you to our diehards. We appreciate you. And looking at the game 5s for those as we are wrapping up here on YouTube live and on Twitter, to your point, Tyler, it is all about capitalizing on momentum, especially when your starting pitchers are going out, having scoreless showings or even just giving up 1 run. Your offense has to support them. And we have today a game 5 between the Dodgers and the Padres. It's the historic moment of the first time we're having 2 Japanese-born pitchers pitching in a game 5 in a postseason game like this. You've got Darvish going up against Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and Yamamoto gets a start ahead of Jack Flaherty. Darvish has been really good in the postseason. He's won all 6 of his starts since coming back from the IL on September 4th. He also, in general, has a 10-2 overall record, and he's had, outside of that 2017 World Series, when the Astros destroyed him, he has a 2.92 career ERA in his other 10 postseason starts, including a 2.53 in his 5 starts with the Padres. And his last winner-go-home game at Dodger Stadium was not good. Today could be different. Of course, the bullpen has also been a big factor for the Padres because they have players like Tanner Scott and Robert Suarez and Jason Adam, different guys that they haven't had to use much. So their bullpen, as you talk about momentum, have had 10 innings pitched, 0 earned runs, 5 hits, 11 strikeouts, 2 walks. The bullpen's been doing a good job against the Dodgers to hold strong. And for the Padres-Dodgers series, game 5 tonight, that gets started at 8:08. I actually have the Padres winning this one. They won game 1. They've been the better team in this series, in my opinion. I do think that the Padres win this one. The Dodgers have been okay in their winner-take-all postseason games, especially at home. But I do feel like starting pitching, bullpen, hitting is going to be all there, and the Padres are winning today.
Yeah, I'm taking the Padres in this one as well. I think it was a miscalculation to start Dylan Cease on short rest. I get why they did it, but he didn't pitch particularly well in game 4. The Dodgers jumped all over the Padres to win game 4 and keep themselves alive. I think
I didn't mind it because you do have Darvish, so you can't use both of them in game 5 anyways.
Sure.
Is the only spin cycle I have for that.
Sure. And as you mentioned, Darvish was great in his last time out. He went 7 innings. I think he gave up 1 earned run. And he's been good since returning from. And you and I talked about him before the series even started, how he has kind of reinvented himself as a pitcher a little bit. Still throws a plethora of pitches and throws a lot for strikes. He's got good break on his breaking ball. Doesn't necessarily have the life on his fastball that he once did, but he continues to pitch well and he knows how to pitch. His time he upsets timing. He knows how to work backwards when he needs to. He mixes his pitches well. There's still life to him. And I agree with you. I'm taking the Padres in this one on the road as well. I think I've been saying for a while, if the Padres win this series, I think they're going to win the World Series. But they need to win this game first.
Yeah. So to your point, very interesting. It all does come down to a lot of little factors. Let's get into that final one. Just a quick preview on it. As you mentioned,
Tarik
Skubal is pitching in this one. And it's the Cleveland Guardians who had a great performance from David Fry, did make some history What was he? The first MLB player, the first player in Major League Baseball history to have a go-ahead pinch hit home run and a run-scoring bunt in the same game, regular season or postseason. That was all great for the Guardians.
Yeah, how about the suicide squeeze?
I know. Tarek Skubal is back on the mound. I want to go Tigers on this one as a great Cinderella team that I think has been playing base. We talk about the youth, but we also talk about the fact that they've been I picked them, by the way, to be in the postseason, and here they are showing out. I think they're a dangerous, sneaky team, and I think that they have enough to beat the Guardians. I actually think the Tigers win today.
This one you and I will disagree on. I'm going to take the home team in this one. I think the Guardians win this one. For all the the reasons you just laid out with the Padres bullpen, the Guardians bullpen has been taxed a lot. They've been asked to throw a lot of pitches. Hunter Gaddis threw 20-plus pitches yesterday. Emmanuel Clase had to get, I believe, a 5-out save it was in yesterday's game. The Guardians bullpen has been asked to perform a lot, especially considering the fact that Matthew Boyd didn't get out of the fifth. I believe it was Ben Lively pitched in game 2. I think he only went 3, possibly 4, but they've asked this bullpen to throw a lot of pitches. I think they're going to Stephen Vogt is going to ask his bullpen to throw a lot of pitches one more time. He's going to play the matchups. I know Kerry Carpenter with a potential hamstring or whatever the lower leg injury was that they talked about yesterday. I'd be interested to see if he's going to be back in the lineup today. These two managers have done a really good job of managing the matchups, and you have to do that when you have a team that is a lower payroll type of team. You're mixing and matching these guys, and you're trying to get the advantage. I think AJ Hinch and Stephen Vogt will both be in the conversation of AL Manager of the Year at the end of the season. I'm going to take the home team in this one. I just think that even with Clase throwing a lot of pitches, I'd rather him on the mound at the end of the game than and don't get me wrong, Will Vest did a good job, and Bo Brisky's done a good job out of the Tigers bullpen. But there's nobody I want on the mound more than Emmanuel Clase to win a game. I'm going to take the Guardians in this one.
Yeah, I could see this one going either way. I know Emmanuel Clase, Tarek Skubal, who's had a 2.39 ERA the regular season, has a nice whopping 0 flat ERA for the postseason so far because he's held the Guardians scoreless every time he's pitched. He's had just 7 hits allowed, 14 strikeouts, 1 walk. The Guardians actually don't have, as of now, the starter announced, but I know in the chat it was mentioned Skubal will pitch a complete game. If Tarek Skubal pitches a complete game, the Tigers win this one. I would be pleasant with you guys.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. If he goes the distance, they're winning this game.
Yeah, they're winning this game. So I think you actually have to kind of put this on him of, hey, this is your game. Go out there and win it for us. But it's exciting times for Game 5. It'd be way more exciting if we were talking about the Phillies in a Game 5 versus the Mets. But unfortunately, the reality is here we are. We're now previewing other teams in Game 5. So that'll do it for us here. Do you have more stats?
No, I was just trying to see when the last time Tanner Bybee pitched was to see if he was available at all today for Cleveland. I'm just trying to put together who's going to be the starter for Cleveland.
Yeah, they have TBD as their starter right now. Hopefully TBD throws a good game. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Lots of that. Of course, their game is not until tomorrow. So that's the other thing. They've got some time. They don't have to announce their starter quite yet because their game is tomorrow night. 8 o'clock, I think, is also the start for that one. 8:08 start as well. So Major League Baseball playoffs roll on. This postseason continues without our beloved Phillies. So that'll do it for us here on PHLY Phillies presented by Ace.
Oh, I'm sorry. Tanner Bybee started yesterday. I apologize.
No, all good. No, I really don't know who they have pitching.
Yeah, couldn't tell you.
Yeah, so we'll see, though. We will find out tomorrow for sure. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe. We'll be talking more around the Phillies in their post-space season, but we'll also be talking more postseason baseball here on the show as well as we continue to follow the other teams to see who's going to go the distance. So for Tyler, for Jamie, myself, Renee, thank you all so much for another fun Friday, as fun as it could be when you're not talking about the Phillies playing baseball. Have a great weekend, as great as it could be when you're not watching the Phillies play baseball. And we'll see you back here live at 11 a.m. to talk more Phillies baseball. See you guys.
We all silly like the mayor.